Hello, I'm Li Jianhua. Welcome to Global Business Europe, our top stories. A 5-year plan to get China spending more, with services and AI-related products top of the shopping list. South Korean shares of SK Hynix post their biggest one-day fall in history as investors crash in profits from the blockbuster Nasdaq debut. President Trump reimposes a blockade on Iranian ports and claims the U.S. will charge 20% on all ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And Europe buys record volumes of Russian LNG despite plans to phase out Russian gas for next year. Well, China has unveiled a new 5-year plan to boost domestic spending. Beijing aims to raise household incomes by strengthening social welfare, while expanding consumption through the service sector and wider adoption of AI. The government aims to increase total retail sales of goods and services from about $7 trillion in 2025 to around $9 trillion by 2030, which is expected to add roughly $1.4 trillion in annual spending, an increase comparable to the size of the Netherlands economy. While the plan places a strong emphasis on expanding services consumption, its priority sectors include the silver economy, parenting products, healthcare, culture and tourism, and the snow economy. In the first 5 months of the year, services continue to drive overall consumption in China. Services retail sales grew over 5%, outpacing goods retail sales, which increased nearly 1.5%. While the plan also puts AI consumption in the spotlight, it encourages spending on smartphones, computers, robots, and 3D printers, while supporting the rollout of self-driving technologies. And to encourage spending by foreign tourists, China says it will expand direct flights to more destinations in Europe, the United States, and the Belt and Road partner countries. It also plans to extend its visa-free policy to more countries. Let's get more on the subject. Mark Ostwald is the Chief Economist and Global Strategist at ADM Investor Services International. Mark, great to have you on the show again. So we know that increasing domestic spending has always been on the priority. Actually, it could go back to 2020 even. So why now there is a specific, dedicated 5-year plan just to that?
I think for good reason. When we get the GDP numbers later in the week, we've got the trade data tomorrow, what we'll see is an economy where external demand is extraordinarily strong and admirably strong, but domestic demand is not particularly effective. Retail sales are forecast at -0.1 for June, after -0.8 in May. Very disappointing. So there is a need to drive better private consumption, and very understandably so. And there is also a need, as was outlined in the initial details of the initial 5-year plan, to boost domestic demand in general, and to also improve the social safety net with increased social transfers. When one compares China to the EU, which is perhaps not a fair comparison, but they are, it's of interest. Social transfers in China amount to 13%, and they amount to 30% in the EU.
Well, Mark, over the past year, the government has rolled out various measures to stimulate domestic spending, including the trading policies we have seen. So what other changes are we really expecting?
I think the important thing is the improvements related to childbirth and child care are very important, as are healthcare and care for the elderly, as well as reducing some of the red tape around leisure activities and cultural activities. There is a lot of potential there. It's a very large population, and if the opportunities exist, as we've seen particularly in a lot of Western countries, for more entertainment type and cultural things, people will go and spend that sort of money, whereas they perhaps might not be rushing to buy a house. They probably will be continuing to buy cars, but increased leisure activities definitely drive better services in economy. That's been true the world over.
And what is slightly different this time, Mark, is Chinese authorities are also hoping inbound tourism and AI could also boost domestic spending. So how much do you think those can contribute to its domestic spending and its economy?
I think in terms of the AI economy, China has huge potential. It's already addressing a lot of the issues which perhaps some of the Western developers are only gradually catching up with, i.e. the high cost of AI is something which is actually a big hurdle, and China is moving very rapidly in that direction to make sure that it is affordable, and therefore the attractions and the ability for AI to transform a lot of things is definitely there. I think the other aspect is this aspect of social transfers. With a greater social safety net within China, people won't feel when the economy, perhaps jobs which are in a transition phase, the type of jobs which are being in demand now are very different to 5, 10, 15 years ago, wherever you look in the world. But you need more of a social safety net on that so that people feel encouraged to join the high-tech economy, and that there are opportunities there.
Oh, thank you very much, Mark, for your insight. Well, China has also unveiled a 5-year plan to improve the nation's health. The plan aims to raise average life expectancy to 80 years by 2030. It hopes to raise the country's major health indicators to be on par with high-income countries. Separately, Beijing is also looking to expand the rehabilitation and assistive devices industry. China is home to more than 320 million people aged 60 and above, and over 85 million people with disabilities. So what could a stronger healthcare system in China mean for the rest of the world? Scan the QR code on the screen to watch our special reports on YouTube, where people from outside the country share their experiences with China's healthcare system. It seems like we don't have a QR code. So China's President Xi Jinping is set to outline the country's vision for AI development and global governance later this week. President Xi will attend the World AI Conference in Shanghai for the first time and deliver a keynote address. China expects the full-day event to provide a major platform for industry leaders and policymakers to discuss the future of AI. South China's Hainan province will become the country's first province to ban the sale of new combustion engine cars starting in 2030. The island has been preparing for the transition since 2019. It also aims to increase the share of electric and hybrid vehicles on its roads from 23% to 45% by 2030. Volkswagen has confirmed plans to axe 50,000 more jobs, bringing the total to 100,000. It is potentially one of the largest job-cutting programs in corporate history. The company's profits have plunged due to U.S. tariffs and Chinese competition. The CEO has said the company faces a disadvantage of 20% in overhead costs compared to its competitors. Well, SK Hynix's shares in South Korea have suffered their biggest one-day fall in history, tumbling more than 15%. Investors are cashing in on the South Korean chipmaker's blockbuster debut on the Nasdaq on Friday. Our correspondent Mitch McCann is in New York. Well, Mitch, great to have you. So what is driving the drop in the KOPSI?
Yeah, good afternoon from New York. Look, investor concern in South Korea largely relates to both the global sell-off that we're seeing as the war in Iran flares up again and scepticism around the long-term prospects of AI chip makers, which have significantly lifted markets in South Korea in recent months before the drop we've seen in recent weeks. Investors are also concerned about market concentration as well. Now, this hasn't just happened overnight in Korea. We've seen sharp drops in the KOSPI in recent weeks, and it fell into a bear market last week after falling 20% from its most recent high in June. And Monday's losses were led by South Korea's two largest companies. Samsung was down 10.7%, while SK Hynix, as you just mentioned, was down more than 15% on Monday. Now, this drop is significant for the fact that trading was halted on the market for 20 minutes in what is described as a circuit breaker, not the first this year. And our viewers will remember we spoke about this on Friday. SK Hynix listing on the Nasdaq, where it opened at $170 per share. Today, a short time ago, it had fallen to around 7.7%. pulling back that share price to $155, so not the start to its first American trading week that the company was hoping for. But some of that decline won't only be related to concerns around chip stocks. Some investors will actually be taking profits out after the stock's strong debut, so a quick turnaround in profits for some people. The skepticism around chip makers and memory stocks has also been seen in the US here today. The Nasdaq down 1.4% a short time ago, and the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index was down 3.5% as well. So not a great day on the markets.
Well, Mitch, we have just learned that President Trump said the United States will reinstate its blockade of Iranian imports. So just how the markets are reacting in the US?
Yeah, well, I just mentioned that the Nasdaq was down, but the Dow Jones and S&P 500 are down here in the US as well. Brent crude oil is edging back toward $80 a barrel. That has pushed airline stocks lower, as you might imagine, this afternoon. American Airlines down 3%. United Airlines also down just over 3%. A number of the major banks also here in the US are trading lower this week. I thought it's important to point this out because their earnings are coming out in the next couple of days, so we'll be watching that closely. But also this week, tomorrow we learn June's CPI figures. That report is released and it's going to give us the latest reading on inflation, and the markets will be looking at that very closely as well. So a lot to gauge this week here on Wall Street.
Well, thank you very much, Mitch. That is Mitch McCann, our correspondent in New York. Well, Europe imported record amounts of Russian liquefied natural gas during the first half of the year, despite the EU's plans to end its reliance on Russian energy. New figures show Russia's biggest LNG export project is still sending large volumes of European customers ahead of the tougher restrictions due next year. Nearly 10 million tons of liquefied natural gas arrived in Europe from Russia's Yamal LNG project during the first 6 months of 2026, up by 18% on the same period last year. Well, France, Belgium and Spain were the largest European buyers. And this all comes as the European Union prepares to further tighten restrictions on Russian gas. In April, imports under short-term contracts were banned. And from January next year, the ban will expand to long-term contracts. Then all remaining Russian gas imports will be phased out, including pipeline gas, by late 2027. Anna Maria Yala-Makarevich is a Europe energy analyst at the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. Anna, great to have you on the show. So I guess the major reason for the increase is front-loading. Can we say that?
Yes, we can say that. And it's not the first time that it happens. When we remember the Russian LNG transshipment ban that came into effect in March, I think last year, if I'm not wrong, then we saw a huge increase on transshipment prior to that. Then also with the transit via Ukraine, the contract was going to expire end of December 2024. So we saw a huge increase also on transit of Russian gas via that pipeline. Mm-hmm. So we noticed that it happens all the time. The moment a ban is coming into effect, we see a huge increase of flows until, while it is valid, while it is legal to do it, it's going to happen like that.
And we know the European Union is planning to phase out LNG imports from Russia by the end of 2027. Do you think before that we'll see more front-loading? And how do you think that will impact the market?
I think we will see. Sadly, we will see. Because as we have noticed, a huge increase this first semester of Russian LNG imports. Still is legal. Those are private companies that have signed these contracts with Yamal LNG. They are allowed to do it, still allowed. So then we are going to see it. We are going to see more. We need to fill in the storage. Right now is 51.9%. So gas storage is lower than in previous years. So they need to refill it too. We are going to now enter into winter months later. So we could see an increase on Russian LNG imports.
And the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, I believe, has been part of the reason too. So how vulnerable is Europe's LNG supplies to the war in the Middle East now?
I think, yes, it has affected, but we would have seen this regardless of the Strait of Hormuz being blocked. We would have seen this situation happening, the increase on LNG imports from Russia. Having the Strait of Hormuz blocked right now, still that increases that situation, that puts a strain on the situation. But even though we don't import that much right now from Qatar, is around 8%. We used to import before like 12%, 15%. Now was around 8%. Still is 20% of the global LNG that is out of the market. So that is the situation right now, that we are going to be competing with other markets in the world for this LNG from other suppliers. In Europe, there are some countries that could be more affected by the Qatari LNG, like Italy, Belgium, Poland. They used to import more Qatari LNG than other countries in Europe.
Oh, thank you, Anna, for that analysis. That is Anna Maria Yala Makarovich from the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. Thank you so much for your insights. And this is Global Business Europe still ahead. From twisting skyscrapers to cutting-edge engineering, the buildings designed to weather the storm.
Everything is a business story.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Li Jianhua. The headlines again. A 5-year plan to get China spending more with services and AI-related products top of the shopping list. South Korean shares of SK Hynix post their biggest one-day fall in history as investors cashing profits from the blockbuster Nasdaq debut. And President Trump reimposes a blockade on Iranian ports and claims the US would charge 20% on all ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, in a remote area of northern China, a new frontier in the country's green revolution has just been established. Powered entirely by renewables, a new plant aims to help reduce emissions in industries that are among the hardest to decarbonize. CGTN's Neil Cairns tells us more.
In China's Gobi Desert, Envision Energy has just opened the world's largest green hydrogen plant. Wang Tianyu spoke to green energy visionary and Envision CEO Lei Zhang in Shanghai.
You once said that the Gobi Desert in Mongolia is your favorite place. It's not one of the favorite places. It is your top one favorite place.
Yeah, people may think it's useless, nothingness, but I do see the abundance, and it's a huge potential for renewable sources over there. This remote spaces is going to be the front line of new development, of the new innovations.
The abundance of sun and wind in this area makes it ideal for green hydrogen production. The Qifeng Net Zero Industrial Park opened in 2025. The 500 megawatt capacity plant is not only the largest green hydrogen producer in the world, but the largest 100% renewable energy system.
So what do you think are the biggest hurdles in building up?
I think the cost still, the green molecule is still a bit more expensive. That's why we need the further development of technology. We see in the past 5 years, so the efficiency of a hydrogen electrolyzer is going to be tripled or even multiple times. And the cost also is a significant reduction.
The so-called green molecules promise advantages in many areas, making them perfect to help reduce global carbon emissions. For example, it's ideal for storing excess renewable energy to be used at a later date. Envis's Qifeng plant is focused on green ammonia production, which is made from green hydrogen.
How do you think that fit into both China and the global long-term energy transition?
So molecule is the best form of long-duration storage. when you have, maritime shipping or space travel or airplanes, you need to carry liquid. So this liquid in the future have come from emission-free resources. At the same time, green hydrogen is very important chemical processing elements. Also, if you want to make green steel, you need green hydrogen. So again, this hydrogen is so important element. So we believe this renewable energy transition is not about just transition. It's going to be transcendence, which is going to lift our civilization, our economy, our social welfare to a next level, to give us a new horizon for our civilization.
As extreme weather events become more frequent around the world, architects are increasingly designing resilient buildings that use stronger materials, innovative engineering and cutting-edge technology. Our correspondent Siobhan McCall has been looking at some of the examples. Siobhan?
Thanks, Shanghai. Yes, the Shanghai Tower is the tallest building in China, standing at over 630 metres. It's been called an engineering and architectural marvel, with a twisting so-called double-skin glass facade that spirals upwards, reducing wind loads. A 1,000-ton mass damper, a steel pendulum, is a key feature of the building to reduce mechanical vibrations. And the damper was seen swaying as it countered the strong winds from Typhoon Barbie. It moved by as much as 2 metres, absorbing the building's sway. The Torre Mayor skyscraper in Mexico is one of the most earthquake-proof structures on the planet. It's built to withstand an 8.5 magnitude quake. Its design includes 96 diamond-shaped dampers, which experts say make it incredibly resilient. Well, that was put to the test in 2003 when a magnitude 7.6 quake hit the area, and it proved its worth. People inside didn't even feel the tremors. Another seismically savvy design is the terminal at Sabiha Gökçen Airport in Istanbul. It's designed to withstand an 8.0 magnitude quake. The terminal sits on 300 pendulum isolators that can move side to side during an earthquake, allowing the whole building to move as a unit and absorb seismic energy. Well, engineers say their brief was not only to stop damage during a quake, but also to ensure that the terminal could function as a critical operations hub for any emergency response and relief effort. The One World Trade Center is the tallest skyscraper in the United States. It's more than 500 meters high. It's one of the most resilient buildings in the world against extreme weather, with design features including a reinforced concrete core and a robust steel frame that helps to resist hurricane-force winds. And the tower also acts as a massive lightning rod. This footage from the recent July 4th celebrations show a lightning strike hitting the spire during a severe thunderstorm. And it isn't only modern design that's providing resilience against extreme weather. The Tomb of Cyrus in Iran is a great example of earthquake engineering. Historically, it's constructed from massive limestone blocks with their weight and interlocking arrangement creating a stable structure that avoids overturning. Its thick walls and simple shape have also helped what is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site survive for more than 2,500 years. Well, Dina Diala is the UNESCO Chair in Disaster Risk Reduction and Professor of Structural Engineering at University College London. Dina, welcome to the programme. I want to ask you firstly about ancient sites and older buildings. How can we protect them from extreme weather? And what's the cost involved in that?
Well, the one example is for instance, the Xinjiang wooden pagoda in Shanxi in China. This is a 1,000 years old structure that is made entirely of timber with no connections in nails and everything, and it has survived numerous earthquakes and numerous windstorms. So there is much that we can learn from historic structures, from the Colosseums to the pyramid and so forth. They have stand there for thousands of years, but we need, of course, to understand what is their level of deterioration and their level of damage as it accumulates through the centuries. Many of them are not inhabited today, but many masonry structures or timber structures that were built 300 or 400 years ago as a residential building or as public building are still inhabited, and similarly for bridges and other infrastructure. So really we need to understand what is the next event that will create a problem for each of these unique structures. And you were asking about the cost of preserving them. This will depend very much on the hazards that they face in any given position. We can use some modern technology that you mentioned in your presentation earlier, such as underneath, such as foundations, dissipation, and so on, which can help preserving them.
Do you think we could reach a point where there's almost, I suppose, nothing more that can be done to protect buildings against resilience when we've kind of tried every engineering and architectural attempt?
Well, I wouldn't think that that's the case. We can always think about better materials that will be able to withstand the threat of increasing temperature cycles, increasing level of rain, increasing moisture around the globe as climate change is forecast to deliver. But we can also think about, very importantly, ways in which we can make our construction industry more sustainable. The current, let's say, industrialized modern construction industry accounts for more than 20% of the carbon that we have, that we produce. And the transport accounts for another 20 to 30%. So if we change this, if we shift our behaviors and our way of thinking and constructing to use more sustainable materials, natural materials, and also thinking about different type of urban settlement, we can indeed reduce the future hazards rather than trying to catch up with them.
Dina Diallo, UNESCO Chair in Disaster Risk Reduction. Thank you very much for those insights. And back over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Siobhan. Marvellous buildings, by the way. Well, the headlines again. A 5-year plan to get China spending more with services and AI-related products top of the shopping list. South Korean shares of SK Hynix post their biggest one-day fall in history as investors cashing profits from the blockbuster Nasdaq debut. And President Trump reimposes a blockade on Iranian ports and claims the US will charge 20% on all ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching. Coming up next on CGTN Africa Live. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place. Now from all the team in London, that's goodbye.